Psalms 14:1. The fool says in his heart, "There is no God." They are corrupt, they do abominable deeds, there is none that is good.
This frequently quoted passage captures the essence of how the average religious person views atheism. Atheism is probably the least popular and least understood philosophical position in America today. It is often approached with fear and mistrust, as if one were about to investigate a doctrine that advocates a wide assortment of evils.
From immorality, pessimism, communism, fascism, to outright nihilism. Atheism is commonly considered to be a threat to the individual and society. It is science divorced from wisdom and the fear of God, writes one philosopher, which the world has directly to thank for the worst evils of modern war. Vincent P. Miscellany claims that every form of atheism, even the well-intentioned, constricts, shrinks, enslaves the individual atheist within and against himself, and eventually as atheism reaches plague proportions among men, goes on to enslave and murder society.
Through similar representations of atheism as an evil, destructive force, religionists throughout history have prescribed various forms of punishment for atheists.
Plato, in his construction of the ideal state, made impiety a crime punishable by 5 years imprisonment for the first offense and death upon the second conviction. Jesus, who is offered as the paradigm of love and compassion, threatened that non-believers will be thrown into the furnace of fire, where men will weep and gnash their teeth, just as the weeds are gathered and burnt with fire. Thomas Aquinas, the great medieval theologian, taught that the sin of unbelief is greater than any sin that occurs in the perversion of morals, and he recommended that the heretic be exterminated from the world by death after the third offense.
Although the atheist now enjoys a comparative amount of freedom in the United States, the struggle for the legal rights of the atheist has been a difficult continuous battle. In addition, we have the stereotype of the atheist as an insensitive, amoral cynic. It is a portrayal that remains widespread in our own time. Atheism, it is charged, is nothing but pure negativism. It destroys but does not rebuild. The atheist is pitted against morality itself, and the struggle between belief in a god and godlessness is viewed as a struggle between good and evil. If true, atheism is claimed to have ominous implications on a cosmic scale. A. Teller expresses the fear of many theists when he writes,
"Even in our hours of most complete and serenest intellectual detachment we cannot escape facing the question whether God can be eliminated from either the natural or the moral world without converting both into an incoherent nightmare."
This image of a godless world is only one among many. Atheism has become so enshrouded with myths and misconceptions that many supposed critiques of atheism are notable for their complete irrelevancy. Some religious critics prefer to attack unpopular ideas sometimes associated with atheism, rather than face the central challenge of atheism directly. Presenting the atheistic point of view is a difficult, frustrating endeavor. The atheist must penetrate the barrier of fear and suspicion that confronts him, and he must convince the listener that atheism represents not a degeneration, but a step forward. This often requires the atheist to take a defensive position to explain why atheism does not lead to disastrous consequences. The atheist is expected to answer a barrage of questions, of which the following are typical.
Without God, what is left of morality? Without God, what purpose is there in a man's life? If we do not believe in God, how can we be certain of anything? If God does not exist, whom can we turn to in a crisis? If there is no afterlife, who will reward virtue and punish injustice? Without the Christian God, how can we resist the onslaught of atheistic communism or militant Islam? If God does not exist, what becomes of the worth and dignity of each person? Without God, how can man achieve happiness?
These questions reflect an intimate connection between religion and values in the minds of many people. As a result, the question of God's existence becomes for them more than a simple philosophical problem. Rather, atheism is interpreted as an attack on these values, and assumes a significance far beyond its actual meaning. Defenses of religion are frequently saturated with emotional outbursts, and the atheist finds himself morally condemned, diagnosed as a confused, unhappy man, and threatened with a variety of future punishments. Meanwhile, the atheist's frustration increases as he discovers that his arguments for atheism are futile, that the overage believer,
who was persuaded to believe for emotional, and not intellectual reasons,
is impervious to arguments against the existence of a supernatural being, regardless how meticulous and carefully reasoned these arguments may be.
There is too much at stake. If the choice must be made between the comfort of religion and the truth of atheism, many people still today will sacrifice the latter without hesitation. From their perspective, there is much more to the issue of God's existence than whether he actually exists or not.
Where does this leave the atheist? Must he offer atheism as an alternative way of life to religion, complete with his own set of competing values? Is atheism a substitute for religion? Can atheism fulfill the moral and emotional needs of man? Must the atheist defend himself against every accusation of immorality and pessimism? Does atheism offer any positive values? These questions are not as complex as they may appear. Atheism is a straightforward, easily definable position, and it is a simple task to outline what atheism can and cannot accomplish. In order to understand the scope of atheism, however, we must remove the wall of myths surrounding it, with the hope that the fears and prejudices against atheism and atheists will collapse as well. To accomplish this goal, we must determine what atheism is, and what atheism is not, a subject this user has touched on in other videos. Link in the sidebar, provided for your convenience.